Friend Gadi Ben-Dov. Gadi and I go back many, many decades. We worked together for the Reform movement. We led trips to Israel together. We were even roommates once upon a time. And our families are very, very close friends. And he's one of the most gifted Israel educators I've ever met and toured with. And we're happy to have him join us. Just his official bio: born in the U.S. but raised on a kibbutz in the Galilee. Now lives in Jerusalem with his family. He became a licensed tour guide after finishing his service in the IDF as an officer and traveled the world. His love of the land and especially the people of Israel have given him insights into this country that he shares with every visitor. And I can attest to the fact that his ability to make connections is at the core of his guiding. He's done individuals, groups, tours, teens, adults, everybody. And he has this beautiful family in Jerusalem. We're so glad that he's here to share with us a little bit about what's been happening from his perspective and his thoughts on the war currently taking place. Gadi, we're so grateful for your time. Thank you for being here.
תודה רבה. I'm blushing here. Thank you for the introduction. And Rachel and I, as mentioned, have gone through different stages in life, and that's true. We were even roommates. That's a fun fact. Even with your son, I'm sure Jordan doesn't remember, though. He was too small. So I'm excited to be with all of you today. I'm thankful for the invitation, and my full disclosure, my father-in-law is a retired Reform rabbi. He's one of Rabbi Les Gutterman's best friends. They talk all the time. So one of the reasons that we got the gig was through those connections. So I'm excited to be here and hopefully share some information. I'm not an expert on Middle East issues. I'm bringing you sort of the live update of the feeling of people and events, how they've affected us. And I'll start really by saying that who would have thought that now, almost 4 months into this mess, that we would still be in a situation that the war is going on and the hostages are still, more than half of them are still there. So it's really a situation. It's uncharted territories for Israel as a country, and even more so for Israelis as a people. The issue of going to reserve duty and being in miluim, and people are falling apart physically and mentally. I mean, there's 300,000 Israelis were recruited on the first week and are serving in various locations in the north or in the south. And slowly in the last month or so, they're starting to let them go for a breather. And the real heroes are really not the reserve duty, but rather their spouses that are left at home with the kids, sometimes running the business that the spouse was running, and it's going to fall apart if the spouse doesn't take over. So it's really an unusual situation. So I'll start the presentation. Feel free to put questions in the chat. I'll save some time at the end for more questions. And again, feel free to ask. I'm Israeli, so I can talk with an Israeli accent also to give you the full effect. But what I'm trying to say is feel free to ask whatever you want. We're not offended. If I don't feel that I can answer, then I'll tell you. But you're more than welcome to ask the questions. Hold on, let me get what I need ready here. Okay. We will start here. Okay, so on October 7th, we were, oh, why is it not working? Here we go. On October 7th, we woke up to a very different situation in Israel. It was the end of a very tumultuous year, 2023. The judicial reform or the judicial change, depending on which side of the politics you are, were going on for almost a year, from January 7th, actually, ripping the country apart right and left. Supreme Court should be the one to override the Knesset. Knesset should be overriding the Supreme Court. People demonstrating almost every Shabbat, Motzei Shabbat, Saturday night in Tel Aviv and Jerusalem. Tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands. I personally was very worried about what's going to happen and how we're going to connect the pieces of the people once again. And with all of that going on October 7th, Hamas invades into Israel. We were very surprised because the Israeli conception was that Hamas is leaning towards becoming a government, more less than a military force. And the belief was for the government as well as the army that they're leaving the armed struggle and becoming a government for their people. And Israel was happy about that. So we laxed our forces on the border, and I'll get to we'll see some maps and see what went on there in general. But this is a very a classic picture that I'm sure you've all saw. This is Shiri Bibas and her two children. They're kidnapped from kibbutz Nir Oz. I'll show you later pictures of the kibbutz. I actually visited there with a solidarity group a few weeks ago. And she's kidnapped with her two sons. Itai is 3 and Kfir is 10 months old. And not only are there people being kidnapped, there's also a lot of attacks. There's rocket fire. There's all kinds of thousands of Hamas operatives that are coming into Israel. Again, we'll show the maps very soon. This is another woman from Nir Oz. Her name is Yafa Adar, 82 years old. And you'll notice that she's smiling. I put her picture here on purpose. She was smiling throughout the whole time she was taken in captivity by the Hamas. And many of the people around thought, oh, she's an old lady. She's suffering from dementia. She doesn't know what's going on. She thinks she's going on a little tour. The reality was she was released after 56 days and said, even then, she came out smiling. She said, I wanted to show my captives that they can't break me, that I'm going to be smiling and not giving them the opportunity to see me in tears or breaking down. And the kibbutz, many other kibbutzes around were devastated. This is just one example. I think this is from Be'eri, if I'm not mistaken. And what happened was, as you can see on the map, that in the morning of October 7th, 6:30 in the morning, it's a Saturday as well as a holiday, Simchat Torah. The Israeli army, assuming that Hamas is not planning anything, sent a significant amount of the infantry units that were around here along the border, about a third of the forces that were here, up to the Judea and Samaria area to help defend and take care of some of the issues that were going on there. Literally the week before, so a few days before all this happens. And on 6:30 in the morning, there's an attack. All of these names that you see with the explosions next to them are villages that were attacked: Sufa, Nirim, Magen, Re'im, Be'eri, Alumim, Kfar Aza, the town of Sderot, Nir Oz, which is about over here, Netiva Asara, over here. And basically the challenge for Israel was that we were always assuming that this border is impenetrable. What we did was, going back to 2005, Israel withdraws unilaterally from Gaza. Basically 15,000 Israelis settlers living around this area along the coastline mostly. One Netzarim, one over here, and a few up here, were evacuated by force, basically by the Israeli government, deciding that it's not worth to control this area, to protect these 15,000 Israelis going in and out of the Gaza Strip. And since then, Hamas takes over the Gaza Strip. They start firing rockets, as you can see here on the left. Israel comes up with the Iron Dome, which is designed to shoot the rockets down and protect Israelis. Another way Hamas is trying to attack Israelis is by creating tunnels underneath the border over here to come up behind Israeli forces and surprise the Israeli forces from behind. As a response to that, Israel creates an obstacle along the border, a fence in most cases that is about 30 feet tall, with cameras and automatic machine guns and people, soldiers, sitting, watching these cameras. And essentially anyone coming close to the border would be shot at immediately by these, kind of like a video game. It was mostly women soldiers that were sitting about 2 miles back and controlling the border by these cameras. In addition, to avoid the tunnels, we also dug a ditch about 100 feet deep, about 30 meters deep, filled it up with concrete sensors, essentially to make sure that anyone trying to dig a tunnel underneath the border would be spotted and identified, and Israel developed different ways of getting rid of these tunnels. So we felt that the border is impenetrable. Hamas came up with a pretty simple solution. They bought a bunch of drones that you can buy in a toy store, put hand grenades on them, and simultaneously on the morning of October 7th, dropped these hand grenades on all of the cameras along the border. And that way, in about a matter of a minute or two, all of these cameras were taken out. Essentially, the eyes of the soldiers looking at the border were taken out. We had very little human eyes looking at the border because we felt confident that those cameras would be sufficient. And that allowed the Hamas to go up to the border, to the fence, blow it up, bulldozers, just knocking it down, and about 30 different locations around this border were open, and close to 4,000 Hamas militants, terrorists were able to come in to Israel at once, essentially between 6:30 and 7 o'clock in the morning on October 7th. The Gaza Strip is a very small piece of land. It's 60 kilometers long, about 40 miles. The narrow area here is only 10 kilometers wide. It's about 7 miles. And down here in the wider area, it's 15 kilometers. So let's say 10 miles. And in this narrow strip are living a little bit more than 2 million people. Most of them, the majority, northern area by the Gaza city, another large population in Khan Yunis in the south. And essentially, Israel, we'll get to that in a minute, but while we were fighting here, there's different regiments, different forces in charge of different areas. Notice that there's also a 15-kilometer, 10-mile border between Egypt and the Gaza Strip. This is actually in the news right now because Israel has essentially cleaned up all of this area down to Khan Yunis, and we're now ready to clean up, for lack of a better term, this area. Ooh. And one of the challenges, what are we going to do with these hundreds of thousands or close to 1 million refugees that are now down here by the city of Rafiah or Rafah? And Israel wants Egypt to step up their control of the border over here and make sure that the bad guys don't come out, that some of the hostages might be taken out. So we want to make sure that's not happening. On October 7th, something happened in Israel that has never happened in the history of modern Israel, or at least in the last few decades. The purple area is area that was essentially taken over by Hamas. Kind of devastating to think that Hamas was in control, not fully in control, but basically anyone driving or going through this area would have been subject to ambushes along the roads and shooting, anti-tank missiles, all kinds of things. And these kibbutzes and moshavim, these villages that you see in black, were taken over. They got all the way to Ofakim. Ofakim is a town 15 kilometers, 10 miles from the border. No one in Ofakim even imagined that Hamas could get this far. They're used to the rockets. They have their safe room. They know the drill by then. But Hamas was able to take over some houses here in Ofakim. Famous story, a woman named Rachel, that was the house was essentially taken over by 3 terrorists. She befriended them. She speaks Arabic. She befriended them, offered them cookies, something to drink, told them jokes, realizing that if she befriends these young men, maybe they won't kill them. And in fact, she was right. She became famous as Rachel Ugiyot, Rachel the cookie maker. You probably heard of her during the first week or so. But bottom line is all this purple area, it took us 3 days, Israeli army, to quickly bring forces down here and try and push Hamas back into the Gaza Strip. The main challenge we had was that the border was open. 30 different locations were open. The Israeli army literally had to put tanks on each of these holes to be able to keep from anyone else coming into to Israel. So it was devastating in the sense of never in the history of modern state of Israel, and I'm talking after the 6-day war, did something like this happen, where an enemy force was able to take over a piece of land. And in terms of casualties, was a very large number, and we'll talk about that shortly. In the north, 2 days into the war, there was also a joining of the effort by Hezbollah. This is Lebanon in yellow. Hezbollah is also an Iranian proxy, and Hamas assumed that Hezbollah will join in. Much to our luck and being happy about this, Hamas didn't tell Hezbollah that they're planning to do this. And Hezbollah basically said, well, you guys didn't tell us, we're not prepared. And the Israeli army quickly brought forces up to the border. The element of surprise is no longer on the side of Hezbollah. And they joined in by firing rockets on some Israeli villages, anti-tank missiles. There are skirmishes going on even now, but a full-blown war did not happen, much to the dismay of Hamas. And Hamas was also very upset with Iran, assuming that Iran will attack at some point and join in as well. So there was a situation in the north that we were worried about. And in order to avoid what happened in the south, where villages were taken over and civilians were taken hostages, the Israeli authorities, the government, told this strip of land, the lilac over here, 4 to 7 kilometers from the border to evacuate. It's about 100,000 people, including my kibbutz, which is right here on the coast. This is where I grew up on the coastline. My family was evacuated. My brother and my parents are down here by the Sea of Galilee near Tiberias, and my sister and her family are over here, even not on the map, farther south. And this includes the large town of Kiryat Shmone. So this is really a significant amount of evacuees, connecting also to the evacuees in the south. All in all, about 220,000 Israelis are refugees in our own country, living in hotel rooms. And again, wow, that's a long question, Ruth, so we'll save it for later because I don't read that fast. Okay, we'll answer a little bit later. 220,000 Israelis living in hotel rooms. In the beginning, it was like, whoa, this is great. We're having a vacation in a hotel. Imagine living in a hotel room with 4 kids, the dog. Some of them are not in the greatest hotels, and they just want to go home. So it's really a difficult situation in that sense. In Gaza, as mentioned before, Israel infiltrates in, takes over. You can see the red is areas that Israel takes over. We started with the northern part because we wanted to get rid of the range of the rockets. Most of the rockets to Israel were from the north part of the Gaza Strip. And I brought this map in the color mainly to show you what we're trying to do now. We're essentially clearing a security zone, buffer zone, call it whatever you want, of a kilometer. It's smaller than what you see here in the picture, of a kilometer that we're clearing away. Buildings, agriculture, anything there is cleared away. By the way, the event of 21 Israeli soldiers that were killed a week or two ago in a collapse of a building happens right around here in that 1 kilometer clearing out zone. That's why those buildings were rigged to explode. So eventually we're planning to pull out, but have this 1 kilometer zone that anyone going in there will be shot. And Israel wants to create that in order to protect our villages. 242 Israelis were kidnapped, and some non-Israelis as well, some agricultural workers. Israel went crazy with all kinds of support rallies. This is the walls of the old city near Jaffa Gate. All around the country, there were different things that took place. This is all 242 of them. I'm sure you've seen the dog tags and the different things that were created with the hashtag Bring Them Home Now. In Tel Aviv, there was also a square that was turned into, the name of it was changed to Hostages Square. And that's where the families have been sitting for three to 4 months now. Demonstrations every week, all kinds of things were going on here. It's right in front of the Israeli equivalent of the Pentagon, where the war cabinet is sitting under the ground. It's not by chance that they chose that location. This is something in Jerusalem, 240 beams of light, all kinds of things. And everywhere you go in Israel, you see these pictures. It's been updated because after 54 days, women and children were exchanged for Hamas operatives. So this has been updated a little bit, but still bus stops, everywhere you go, you see these pictures in support of the hostages. Also on October 7th, the Nova Festival, 3,500 Israelis and some people who actually flew in from abroad came in to celebrate music and an overnight festival. It's apparently an international festival that goes on in other places in the world as well. And Hamas, we don't know if Hamas knew about this or not, but very quickly realized that there's thousands of civilians that are unprotected, and arrived here. Many people were killed. Many women were raped, and all kinds of terrible things that happened here. The site today is a memorial. I'll show you pictures soon. It's very moving and very interesting what happened here. But imagine this is all a big camping site between the groves, and all this was camping. And as I said, 3,500 people roughly that were in this festival. This is what it looks like today. There's memorials, and it's interesting because this was created by loved ones, family members, friends. It's not an official memorial. They all came down and put these metal rods with pictures of their loved ones, hostages, people that were killed there. And it's very interesting to be there and see what's going on. All in all, 1,400 Israelis were killed on that one day, the largest number of casualties ever in Israeli history. And the most horrific part of it is that 760 plus civilians killed in one day, whether it's in the kibbutzim and moshavim and Sderot, Ofakim, in the Nova Festival, and other places. One of the amazing things is all of these days that followed, there were hundreds of funerals. I remember an interview with the head of Chevre Kadisha, the funeral organization, and all of the cemeteries, and this is the head of Mount Herzl Cemetery. And he said that on average, on the week following October 7th, they had 15 funerals every day. The largest amount was 17 in one day. And Israelis showed up to show their support. This is footage that Amy and I took. This is in our neighborhood. This guy, Anir Shapira, a former soldier. He was not in active duty. He was in the Nova Festival. His best friend, Hirsch Poland Goldberg, is also today kidnapped in Gaza. They were both in one of these concrete protection things because they thought it was a rocket attack. And eventually Anir was killed. And there are neighbors in the neighborhood showed up to show their respect as the family was leaving for the funeral in Mount Herzl. Most of these people have never met Anir Shapira, including Amy and I. And this is still happening today when soldiers are killed. Before the family leaves for the funerals, there's people standing on the streets with Israeli flags showing their support. And of course, let's not forget that the civilian population was attacked as well. We're smiling here because it was kind of funny for a while, but this is my family. I wasn't there, I don't remember why, but they're at Tata and Baba's house, Stuart and Ellen, Amy's parents, grandparents, and this is Nivi's friend, my daughter's friend, and something that definitely my kids have never experienced. Alarms, being in the safe room, preparing provisions in the safe room in case there's no electricity and you need some water, you need some food, bringing the dog in, of course, because who knows what's happening outside. All around Israel, this was taking place. I grew up with this kind of stuff, so I don't want to say I'm used to it, but probably not as scared as the rest of the family. After a week, the government is expanded when two parties join in. with two ex-generals, these two on the left, Gadi Eisenkot on the left, and Benny Gantz in the middle. The guy on the right is Gidon Sa'ar, less relevant for this issue, but also joining into the government. And they basically say, we're not joining to do anything else but sit in the war cabinet to be the responsible adult, as they always called it, when decisions are being made about wartime events, sending in the army to different places, decisions about hostages, and so on. The Israelis jump up and are supportive. Amazing things are happening. People are volunteering everywhere. This is a picture of the first few days in the Tel Aviv Expo. They essentially took over the parking lot, and these are people sorting out donations, clothes, food, both for soldiers, but also for the 220,000 Israelis that are refugees in their own country. Folks from the north had a chance to organize their stuff, but some of the people that were rescued and taken from their villages in the south came with literally the clothes that they were wearing, in some cases pajamas they were wearing. So they needed things. So everyone joins in. This is sort of they built computer systems and databases, and you could send a WhatsApp message and of what you need and which hotel or which location, and it would be sent. Incredible systems. The civilians jumped up. There was a lot of criticism of the government that took a long time, a few weeks, to respond and have systems in place. The civilians responded in a very quick and efficient way. This is a restaurant that started making hot meals for soldiers and for evacuees. This is specifically a restaurant that didn't have a kosher certificate. They got a kosher certificate, went through the process quickly so that they could cook, and everyone would be able to have their food. So they were willing to go the extra mile and to do that in order to continue to support everybody. People jumped in for agriculture because all of the agricultural workers left. There were close to 45,000 migrant workers from Thailand and other places. These are actual pictures from last week that Amy took, my wife, going with a group from Leket to volunteer. And finally, after 56 days, there was a hostage exchange. This girl is Emily. I don't know if you remember her story. Her dad is British. She's not British, Irish. And the Irish prime minister said something about she was lost and now she was found. He came under a lot of criticism around the world. What do you mean she was lost? She was kidnapped by Hamas. We knew exactly what situation she's in. Bottom line, there were family reunions. Dad here was not kidnapped, and mom and the two kids were. Dad happened to be out of town on that day. I don't remember the names, but Israel was elated. On the other hand, also worried about the rest of the hostages that, as I mentioned before, are still there. Yes, so brothers in arms. I didn't want to get into it too much, but the picture we saw before is actually the brothers in arms that were a protest organization against the judicial reform that realized at some point that they need to rally and use all of their resources for the people that need help. And they, within 2 days, switched all of their systems into helping and volunteering and sending all kinds of stuff. Pretty amazing. Achim LaNeshek, as it's called in Hebrew. Unfortunately, we're still in a situation where some of the hostages are still there. A couple weeks ago, we celebrated the 1-year birthday of Kfir Bibas, the redhead baby that was 10 months old when he was kidnapped. And we marked his 1 year birthday. You can see the Knesset was lit up in orange, the Jerusalem entrance, the Tel Aviv municipality. I know that around the world, there were some more supports in that as well. Basically, they're redheads, so that's why the orange. Also, the 100 days are. I'll come back to this. Let's go to the other. The 100 days of people being in hostages is still it's being marked about a week ago, and we're already, I think, in 111, if I'm not mistaken. I wanted to show a little bit more, so here we go. This is the Nova Festival site. I was with directors of JCCAs from the United States, and it's a very weird feeling. You see, it's a tourist attraction. People are stopping. There's buses, people coming to see. You could also say that they're coming to bear witness and to sing El Maleh Rachamim and to pay their respects. But it's really a difficult visit, I think, for a lot of people. And you can see what was done here. This is not official. It's not an official memorial. This was spontaneous, done by relatives, friends, all of these metal poles with pictures of the people that were killed, kidnapped. It'll be very interesting, I think, to see what happens when the government decides it's time to make a memorial. It's also very well connected, I think, to a Jewish concept of memory and commemoration, and it's not surprising that this is here. You more pictures. You've seen some of these. And of course, there's a Chabad tent there. The Chabad rabbi is always on call if people want to say Kaddish or have a minyan or anything like that. And what I was really amazed is that nature is continuing. Every February, there's a festival called Darom Adom, which is the Red South. The anemones, kalaniot, these red flowers, grow in incredible numbers everywhere you look, fields and fields of these red flowers, and nature is continuing. It's the festival is not celebrated this year, but the anemones are there. This is the house of the Bibas family in Nir Oz, in the Nir Oz kibbutz. This is the group, and a lot of, as a kibbutznik, walking around. I grew up next to the border. My biggest fear as a child was terrorists coming into the kibbutz. And this was something that I always know that the army will come and help us if terrorists get into the kibbutz. And I'm sure these people felt the same, but the army wasn't there and help was not there. So a lot of these houses are in pretty bad condition. Not all of the houses, but the guy from the kibbutz that showed us around said that about 70% of the houses on the kibbutz are destroyed in some way and are probably going to need some kind of renovation eventually. This was a devastating day in Israel about a week and a half ago. 21 Israeli soldiers were killed in the explosion of a building that collapsed. 3 other soldiers were killed nearby as well. So in one day, 24 Israeli army soldiers were killed. The majority of them reserve duty with families and children. the 100 days. These are just, I wanted to show you some more pictures. There were rallies everywhere. Even Machon Weizmann, the Weizmann Institute in Rehovot, you're seeing more and more of these yellow ribbons on people's clothes or cars. It's becoming more of a thing. And here's the Bibas family, Yarden, the dad, Shiri, the mom, Uriel, the older son, and he's 3, and Kfir, who's now a little bit over a year. And with the JCCA directors, they brought orange balloons, and we let them go as a way to hope that the Bibas family are seeing them somewhere by the Gaza Strip. Okay, I think that is enough for now. So questions. Ruth, if you don't mind asking that paragraph that you wrote, I will be happy to answer.
Sure. Sorry, it was going to be just one sentence and it got away from me. I apologize. So you had mentioned in the beginning that there was this conception that Hamas was more interested in governing and therefore wasn't really viewed as a threat, and was a transition to I don't know, high-tech protection of the border. But then it seems from some of the stuff that then you were showing with what the Hamas was doing in terms of building the tunnels and all of that there was really never any reason to believe that they gave up resistance, because they never said that they were going to give up resistance. So how did that come about, and what also led to that moving? And I don't know if it was a week before, it was just maybe a couple of days before, of so many Israeli soldiers to the West Bank.
So I exaggerated in the statement.
To the West Bank and more. Yeah.
Oh, sorry. It's not that Hamas became, a government, but there was an understanding that Hamas is, of course, still wanting to destroy Israel and still wanting to attack Israel, but that it's becoming more concerned with running Gaza and making sure that the people and the facilities and everything in Gaza is running. It's not that they gave up completely, but Israel was feeling secure in the systems that we created, feeling secure in the sense that there was no alerts, there was no intel that Hamas is about to attack. So they felt, the government as well as the upper parts of the army felt that it was okay to, they didn't completely neglect the Gaza Strip. They left some soldiers and tanks, and there was a force there. But because it was a Shabbat, which usually a third of the force goes home anyway, in addition to that, feeling that the West Bank is blowing up and getting problematic, that is going to need more forces there. So it was a political, not a political, it was a government. I'm talking about the Minister of Defense and the heads of the army decision to shift the force towards the West Bank into Judea and Samaria. Now we know that there were some lower ranks that said, look, they're planning an attack. We can see that they're practicing how to breach a fence. We can see that they're practicing how to take over a village. And all of this was passed up to the people to the higher ups in certain ways, probably because there's something called groupthink, which is essentially when you have a committee and 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 people in the committee are saying X, then even if somebody in the corner believes that it's Y, they'll eventually say, okay, it's really X. And we think that that's probably what happened here in the intelligence apparatus and the army, that either they didn't believe the lower ranks, or believe that their concept of what Hamas is planning is different. Hamas was doing it on purpose. They were trying to make us fall asleep, essentially, to be able to do this surprise, and they were successful. I hope that answered your question, more or less. Lori, bevakasha.
I've learned so much. Thank you so much. And just wondering how Israelis are thinking about the Palestinian casualties and how they're dealing with that devastation and sort of holding both things. I feel like there's such, divisiveness in our country, and trying to hold the hostages in one hand and the devastation in Palestine and, in Gaza in the other. How are Israelis processing that, and what's the common,
So I think, first of all, you guys get more news that deals with the Palestinian issues and how devastating the destruction is in Gaza. It's not shown as much in Israeli media. I sometimes watch Al Jazeera, or I get information. My father-in-law watches CNN and BBC, so I get updates from him. But there's less focus in Israel on that. And also, don't forget that we're at war with the Palestinians. And with all due respect, we feel bad, and we feel the devastation that's going on there. But better that Gaza is devastated than Nir Oz or Kfar Aza or Sderot. On the other hand, there's a lot of Israelis that feel that we're too hard. We're going in with too much power, too much ammunition. We're blowing up too many houses, too many things. And the response usually is, we'd rather keep our soldiers safe than not blow up a certain house that we believe is rigged, or that there's a Hamas tunnel that comes up in the through this house, and so on. So I think Israelis are worried about Gazans and the people in Gaza and what's going on. More than half, this is something that was in the Israeli news actually this week, more than half of the houses, apartments in Gaza were destroyed. In other words, more than half of the 2 million people that lived in Gaza don't have a house to go back to that's going to be in shape for them to be able to live in. Not to mention water and sewage and infrastructure, and 70%. Okay, I think it depends on which cities you're focusing on, Ruth. It's the average, I understood, is more than half. Khan Yunis, where Israel is now fighting with significant forces, demolished more than half, 70 or 80%. But the bottom line is, Israelis are. Someone asked me the other day about a two-state solution. In the U.S., there's a lot of pressure from the American administration on Israel to focus on a two-state solution, to bring in humanitarian aid, while Israel is saying, what do you mean humanitarian aid? We want the hostages first. How are you feeding the people there before the hostages are released? And many Israelis are saying, two-state solution? No way. These guys tried to kill us less than 3 months ago. Now we want to reward them by giving them their own state. Who are we going to trust there? Who are you going to put in charge in that state that can guarantee for Israel that they're not going to reassemble their forces and attack Israel again? I'd say 2/3 of Israelis right now, if you ask them two-state solution, would say what I just told you. Not something that we're interested right now. We don't trust the Palestinians, not to mention that surveys that have been published show Hamas support or that most of the population in the West Bank and Gaza are supportive of Hamas and their actions on October 7th. So I think the US is looking at this in a Western American lens, whereas Israelis that are in the middle of all of this mess right now are less supportive and less focused on the situation of the Palestinians and more of our own personal situation where my husband is in the reserve, or my son, my dad, all of that stuff around. It's not to say that when the war is over, things will look different. And I have to say that I'm personally, this is my personal opinion, I feel very bad, and I'm really worried about the Palestinians in Gaza. We devastated their cities and their refugee camps, and it's going to be a serious challenge for them to come back to life. On the other hand, I think that they are happy. This might sound weird, but I believe that the people of Gaza are happy that we're getting rid of Hamas, because Hamas was a government that basically took billions and billions of dollars and created these tunnels and bought weapons and didn't provide for their people schools, hospitals, facilities. People were not happy with their government. They couldn't say much because they would be killed or taken out. Or so in some ways the world is also, it's, you're not going to hear this officially, but the Arab world, Egypt, Jordan, Saudi Arabia, the Emirates, are in a way happy that Israel is taking care of Hamas, even though they need to show that they're concerned about the Palestinian people.
Thank you.
And again, that's Gadi Ben-Dov's opinion. You might hear other Israelis, but I'm considered left and center in Israel. So if I'm speaking like this, you can sort of imagine where the rest kind of thinks that way. What is the level of concern? Israelis are grateful to America for its support. In fact, jokingly, we said, but there's a lot of truth to it, that on the first couple of weeks after the war started, we felt that our leader was President Joe Biden, that spoke to the people, that brought American support. We heard nothing from our government for almost 2 weeks into the war. So Israelis are very supportive of and very happy, and feel that America has embraced what's going on here. On the other hand, Israelis are, I've heard this from more right-wing people that are saying, we don't need America, we can make our own decisions. Bibi, don't listen to the American government officials that are coming and telling us what to do. We can resolve this on our own. Unfortunately, I think they're not aware of the ammunition that the US is sending. The fact that there was a carrier group that was brought to the region a few days into the conflict probably made or convinced Hezbollah not to join in fully, because if they joined in, we would have been in real trouble. Two fronts, and Hezbollah being a real army, not just a terrorist organization. So I think Israelis are very happy with the American support. On the other hand, there are those who are saying we should make our own decisions. And those are responses usually get the response of, what are you talking about? The US is enabling us to keep fighting, keeping world pressure from pressure to stop. Even if we need to put in humanitarian aid, those are compromises that need to be done so that we could continue with this fight. So I think Israelis are very supportive of American support. We also know that Biden is going into an election year, and that there's a lot of pressure on the Biden administration on the US, and that's something that's going to affect what's going on as well. I'm not sure Israelis are really involved in American politics. We do see on the Israeli news that there's an election year, that the primaries of the Republican Party was definitely something that was televised and broadcast in Israel quite a bit. So we are aware of what's going on there. Talk more, the tunnels, how they identify them, how much is known about them. So we were surprised at the amount of tunnels that were down there. I remember the first couple of weeks they were talking about 450 kilometers of tunnels. That's about let's say 300 miles of tunnels. Remember how long and the width of the Gaza Strip. Now they're talking about close to 800 kilometers. So we were surprised at the amounts. We were surprised at how deep they went in the different levels. And what's happening in Gaza is something that is unheard of, or the first ever in warfare all around the world. There's really two battles going on. There's the above ground that Israel's doing very well because we have the forces and the tanks and the ability to really do what we need to do. But the below ground and the tunnels battles that are going on, there we have some challenges. You can only go through single file. They go to different directions. Hamas had put in blast doors. In other words, a door that you can close that even if you try to blast it open, you won't be able to. All kinds of issues that we were surprised about. We knew that they have bunkers, we knew that they have tunnels, but the extent and how deep levels, how extensive they are, all that was taken by surprise. I think a couple days ago, there was an official statement by the Israeli army about a system of flooding the tunnels. So it's not that they're planning to flood the tunnels now and kill everybody that's down there. We're worried about hostages being held in these tunnels, but the system is going to be in place when finally we clear out these tunnels. We're planning to flood them with seawater so that they won't be able to be used later on. Rather than blowing everything up, we'll probably fill it up with seawater to get rid of them, basically.
Oh, I heard that system didn't work.
So the official statement by the Israeli army a couple days ago was that there were some glitches on the way, but that they're now the system is in place and ready to go. Again, this is officially, there was the first time the army admitted to something like this, and they officially said that it's working. So, but I heard that it wasn't working before as well.
There's
What
one
did
more
Israel do
question in
about
the
the
chat,
freedom?
Gadi, and then we're going to wrap up. So if you want to address
Okay.
Lori's last question.
Yeah, so Lori, the hostages is a very sad situation. Unfortunately, for some of them, we have signs of life from the 50, hostages that came out after 54 days. That they said, yes, we saw Kiva, we saw Michael, and we know that they were there, whether they were injured or not. We know that they're not being fed very well. We know that it's very damp, and that if they're injured, which some of them were injured during their abduction, that they weren't treated the way in super kind of facilities that we would have want them to be treated. So there is real concern about those people. If you remember, 2 weeks ago, Qatar arranged for medications to be delivered to these hostages. Unfortunately, we have absolutely no proof that they actually did deliver these medications. So we're hoping that they in fact did deliver. They were literally, the doctors of the hostages made a list of the type of things that they need for all kinds of conditions. So hopefully they got their medications, and the families of the hostages are losing hope more and more. Yesterday, there was an attempt. They met with Netanyahu, and they wanted him to make a statement that the number one goal of the war right now is returning the hostages home. He refused, essentially, because he said, our number one goal is to topple down the Hamas. Of course, getting the hostages back is also very important, and we're doing everything we can. But he was not willing to make that statement. And he's also in a situation where he has to appease some of his political partners in the government, but that's a whole other issue. I tried to stay out of Israeli politics as much as I could in the last hour, but the main challenge is, and I'll finish with this, the war is probably not going to end with a parade in the streets of Jerusalem and Hamas surrendering and pictures of the hostages being saved. It's an ongoing process that's going to take months, some say even till the end of 2024. And whether we can decide at some point that the war is over and start investigating who's at fault, start investigating or figuring out what to do with our political system. Do we need new elections? All of that is going to start becoming part of Israeli society and Israeli interests. And of course, the hostages that are hoping that they won't need to stay there for an entire year, because many of them will probably not make it for that length of time. Thank you for listening, everyone. I hope this wasn't too painful.
Gadi, we're
And,
so grateful.
I was telling Rachel and Rabbi Mack before that every Wednesday I do an update about what's going on in Israel. It's at 3 p.m. on Eastern time, and I'll send the information on how to sign up if you're interested. And it's kind of like what I showed. I show some pictures, some little slides sometimes, and try to give you guys the feel of what's going on here in Israel.
Absolutely. And maybe, Rach, do you have that link handy? Maybe you can even put it in the chat.
I don't have it. Gadi, if you want to put it in the
Or
chat.
Gadi, you feel free to put it in
Yeah.
the chat, and we can certainly
I just want,
share.
yeah, I just want to say thank you. I think one of the most important things we can do to better understand from the American Western point of view of what's happening is to stay in touch with our families in Israel, and they all are our family. And we are one Jewish people, and some of us have very close people there that we care about. Some of us don't know anybody there, but there are people like Gadi who are available, to keep us posted and let us know how things are going. The news is not always presenting the stories we need to see or as they should be presented. Gadi, if you could also share any sources you follow that you think are trustworthy. I know our last guest last week mentioned Times of Israel is a very good source. And there's certain people we follow on social media. Sarah and I have those lists as well. But I think the more we can do to educate ourselves from Israel directly, from people who are living through this, is really informative and critical to us providing the support from here. And we truly do care about your safety and hope you and your family stay safe. And we're so grateful for your time.
Yeah. Oh, well
Thank
said,
you.
Rach. Thank
So-
you.
I think Times of Israel is sort of balanced. Jerusalem Post is more to the right. Ynet is also, they're more to the left. And Haaretz is very left. So if you want a broad spectrum, I'd say check the topics in all of those different medias. Thank you very much for having me.
Thank
Appreciate
you
it.
for being with us and sharing your voice and sending love from over here, and letting everyone know we have another Lunch and Learn next week. And if you missed last week, I'm happy to share that recording. If you email us, I'll figure out how to pull it out from the cloud. I'm not sure where it goes when we're done with it, but we'll figure it out. And
It's on the temple website.